I think the similarities between Texas A&M in 2022 and USC in 2026 might be too big to ignore. If you missed it, USC got another high-profile commit, a four-star defensive end, Luke Wafel, from the state of New Jersey that USC was battling schools like Ohio State and Penn State for. Reportedly, there are NIL back and forths and NIL matches and ante-up offers, and it's just... But it's somewhat similar to what happened at Texas A&M in 2022. And not just from the recruiting trail, but kind of on the field too, where at that time, you can't argue anything other than Jimbo Fisher was starting to feel the pressure a little bit at Texas A&M and needed a big-time recruiting class. And he went out and got a big-time recruiting class. At the time, was viewed as the best recruiting class in the history of college football. And then it didn't necessarily pan out. It didn't go so well. Now, there were some guys that were really good players from that recruiting class. That Shamar Stewart was still a first-round NFL draft pick. Walter Nolan is, still a very good football player, but he transferred out. Evan Stewart, wide receiver at Oregon, transferred out. The expectations for signing the greatest recruiting class of all time was not met by the actual production. And again, there still were some good players there. Connor Wegman, but USC in 2026 is in kind of that same mold of, I think it would be hard to argue that Lincoln Riley isn't feeling it just a little bit of like, hey, we hired you and spent a lot of money for you to turn this thing around, and you haven't done that yet. Are you going to? And if you need us to, we're willing to write some checks in the NIL world to get you the best recruits. And right now in the class of 2026, USC has 30 commits. They've got 30 kids that if signing day was today, supposedly they would be Trojans. 19 four-stars. They have more four-stars than the next four teams in the recruiting rankings have commits. So things have gone undeniably well on the recruiting trail for USC. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, asking, does Lincoln Riley have USC pointed in the right direction? Because they've seen their win total decrease every year under his tutelage. And I think it's a fair question to ask, but it's also hard to argue, hey, you've seen the win totals go down, but also right now, barring a once-in-a-generation run from A&M, Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson, Penn State, Michigan, whoever, USC is going to have the number one recruiting class in 2026. But, and I wholly recognize this sounds so incredibly dumb, but does being in a situation where your only objective is to stockpile the best players money can buy, the best strategy in recruiting? Because on the surface, it would make a lot of sense to say, we've got as many good football players as we can stack on one roster. Therefore, we're going to be good. But from what you've seen from Texas A&M 2022, which was the greatest recruiting class of all time, nobody had ever compiled as much talent as the Aggies did that year. How did that shake out? Now, you could argue that maybe some of those guys were over-recruited. Some of them were not as good. They were overhyped, came into wrong situations, bad fits, whatever the case may be. But I think in retrospect, in hindsight being 2020, is if you put together your recruiting class strictly based on this is who I want, and I'm willing to spend whatever it takes NIL money-wise to get them, I don't know that that's the best course of action. And I think this is something that a lot of people have warned against, is that if you get into an NIL pissing match with somebody else and the recruit is adamant that pretty much the only thing they care about is the NIL money, Do you want that guy on your roster? And I wholly also recognize the flip side of that is that sure is sour grapes, isn't it? That like, yeah, we didn't get that guy who we sought after for quite a while. That for more than a year, we've dumped thousands of dollars into recruiting, trying to convince him to come play football for us. But now that the dust is settled and he has decided he's going to go somewhere else, you know what? It's probably best that he didn't want to come here anyway. I recognize that that is a fallacy, but there is some logic to it. There is some point to if all they care about is NIL money, if they don't care about how they fit into your program, how they're going to be developed, how you're going to help them get to the NFL, etc. If all they care about is how much money can I get right now, do your priorities match up with theirs? Probably not. So it might not be a good fit. But having a roster full of players who only care about NIL money probably means they only care. This is the logical step, I think. If they only care about how much money they can make right now, they probably only care about themselves. They're looking out for number one, which in the business of college football today, I don't think you can really knock it all that much. I don't think you can say, oh, these stupid kids these days, all they do is care about themselves because, yeah, it's a business. All anybody does is care about themselves. But you do need to have some of those glue guys. You need to have some dudes who are willing to do whatever it takes, who are going to be leaders. There are followers, there are doers, there are wishers, there are pushers. There are all sorts of roles that need to be filled in a college football roster and locker room other than just you play football good. And so I wonder if by compiling 30 commits, 19 4-stars, 10 3-stars, a 5-star, that USC is well outpacing the other recruiting battles and are winning battles against the team that won the national championship last year, which is a considerably shorter, closer to home fit for this edge rusher than USC is. And yet USC wins because apparently there were dueling NIL offers that were in the millions of dollars. And kudos to that young pup for getting what was his. If that's how much somebody is willing to pay you, I don't know that you can knock somebody for taking that money. If the offers are out there, because if I could sit here and if ESPN said, hey, I'm going to pay you $10,000 a month to do the podcast, I can say, hey, I really enjoy what I'm doing right now, but that's a whole lot of money to say no to. If your job, if somebody said, hey, I'm willing to pay you 50% more than what you're making right now to you come do this for me, it'd be really hard for you to say no to that. So I can't knock the player. I can't knock the guys who are looking out for their NIL bag, especially if you get so much money that you can set yourself and your family up for a long time. I think it's difficult to knock that. But if you care about winning, if you care about getting to the next level, if you care about being a better football player, putting the NIL bag at the top of your list makes it really hard, I think, to kind of root for you. And if you put 30 of those guys, and that's not to say everybody that's going to USC is all they're worried about is how much money you gonna give me. That's not the case, and it's never the case. There are guys in that recruiting class that have dreamed about going to USC. I'm certain of it. They have thought, this is my future. The only thing I ever want to do in my entire life is play football at USC. I'm certain that is there. Just like it's there for Texas and Oklahoma and Notre Dame and Ohio State and Florida and Georgia and LSU and Alabama. I'm certain that exists. But I think if anything should be learned from Texas A&M 2022, it's that to kind of pump the brakes on, look at this recruiting class. And that's not to say, because I think there are some people who will tell you, oh, recruiting rankings don't matter, blah, blah, blah. They absolutely unequivocally do. Having the best amount of talent possible out there sure is a nice feature to have. But you need to have maybe a bit more diverse thought process of player rather than just, I'm willing to pay top dollar for whoever I can convince to come play football for me. And then question, oh man, why didn't things go so well in this situation? Well, everybody had their priorities crooked. It's kind of easy to figure out. And so I just wonder if USC is being set up to be Texas A&M 2022 2.0, where we look back and go, yeah, they had 30 commits and they had 24 stars and blah, blah, blah. It was a great recruiting class that like 40% of went on to play meaningful roles at other programs, and Lincoln Riley got fired. And because it is both a blessing and a curse, Lincoln Riley, if you don't have USC pointed in the right direction and it just keeps dropping, and then you couple it with, we're killing it on the recruiting trail. Number one recruiting classes are going to raise the expectations. And if you can't meet the expectations already, that's a hell of a spot to be in. So I think USC is a program to watch over the course of the next year or two, because I think there's a lot of similarities there between Texas A&M 2022 and USC 2026. Got a head coach somewhat on the hot seat. Has been underwhelming. You got big-time recruiting classes, big-time recruits, people questioning why recruits are going there. And then some of those big-time recruits transfer. Some stay, some become first-round picks, some underwhelm almost their entire careers. I think that's something that could be on the table for USC, and I'm certain it's something that they'd like to avoid, but I think it's something worth watching over the course of the next couple of years. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you get all the great college football content we are pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.